It was an ordinary evening at the small but cozy restaurant nestled in the heart of the city. The lights were warm, casting a soft glow over the polished wooden tables, each set neatly with silverware and folded napkins. The smell of fresh bread and simmering sauces filled the air, making the place feel inviting and homey. Outside, the city buzzed with its usual chaos, but inside, there was a calm rhythm, a gentle sense of comfort that welcomed anyone who stepped through the door. The waitress moved gracefully between the tables, balancing plates and glasses with practiced ease. She was young, her eyes bright with a quiet determination, and she carried herself with a mix of humility and confidence that made her presence calming. She greeted each guest with a warm smile, her voice soft but full of sincerity. There was something about her that made people feel at ease, as if her kindness could reach across the table and make the world a little gentler. Despite the elegance of the restaurant, it was not a place for the wealthy elite. Most of the guests were locals, people who appreciated good food and a peaceful atmosphere over flashy displays of wealth. The waitress knew many of the regulars by name, and she remembered their favorite dishes and how they liked their coffee. There was pride in her work, not because of recognition or reward, but because she genuinely cared about the people she served. On this particular evening, the restaurant was busier than usual. The chatter of diners filled the room, mingling with the soft clinking of cutlery and the occasional laughter that rose like music above it all. The waitress moved quickly, her steps precise and fluid, yet never rushed. She had learned to balance efficiency with warmth, understanding that a kind word could matter as much as a perfectly delivered dish. The staff worked like a well-oiled machine. In the kitchen, chefs shouted out orders, their hands moving in swift, practiced motions. The smell of garlic and herbs wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of desserts cooling on the counter. Waiters and waitresses communicated with subtle gestures and quick nods, each knowing their role without the need for words. It was a rhythm born of experience, a harmony of movement that kept the restaurant running smoothly even during the busiest hours. Amidst this familiar scene, a new presence entered the restaurant, one that immediately changed the atmosphere. A man, clearly wealthy, walked in with an air of self-importance. His clothes were expensive, his watch gleaming under the lights, and he moved with the kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance. He was accompanied by a small group, each member reflecting the same sense of entitlement. Their eyes scanned the room with little interest in the warm atmosphere, and their conversation carried a tone of superiority that was hard to miss. The waitress noticed them immediately. She had seen people like this before, those who looked down on the restaurant, on the staff, on anyone who did not match their level of wealth or status. She felt a small twinge of unease but did not let it show. Her training, her experience, and her natural poise allowed her to remain composed. She greeted them with her usual warm smile and polite tone, offering menus and taking their initial orders with care. The millionaire's attention, however, did not stay on the menu for long. He seemed more interested in testing the patience of the staff, in asserting his superiority through subtle jabs and pointed remarks. He asked questions with a mocking tone, commenting on the simplicity of the restaurant, the prices, and even the attire of the staff. His words were like little needles, intended to provoke discomfort and laughter among his companions. Despite the barbs, the waitress remained unshaken. She answered his questions politely, her voice calm and steady. There was a quiet strength in the way she carried herself, a sense that she knew her worth and the value of her work. Each response was measured, never defensive, never sarcastic. She understood that humility was not the same as weakness, and she allowed her professionalism to speak louder than any words. The diners around them began to notice the interaction. Some exchanged glances, sensing the tension that was growing between the arrogant millionaire and the composed waitress. Others focused on their meals, hoping to ignore the scene unfolding nearby, but it was difficult to remain unaffected by the contrast between the two. On one side was entitlement, loud and demanding. On the other was quiet dignity, unwavering and graceful. In the midst of this, the waitress moved with her usual efficiency, taking orders from other tables, refilling drinks, and ensuring that every guest felt attended to. She did not allow the millionaire's behavior to disrupt the overall harmony of the restaurant. Her mind was focused, her movements fluid, as if the busy environment shielded her from the negativity aimed her way. She had learned that composure under pressure was not just a skill but a form of silent power. The restaurant, despite the intrusion of arrogance, maintained its warmth. Soft music played from the corner, a piano that often accompanied the evenings with gentle melodies. The lights highlighted the rich textures of the wooden furniture, the carefully chosen decorations, and the simple elegance that defined the space. It was a place where ordinary people could enjoy a moment of peace, and even the presence of wealth and arrogance could not entirely overshadow its charm. The waitress's eyes occasionally flicked toward the piano. She had always loved music, and the instrument in the corner had been her companion in many quiet moments before and after shifts. She imagined the notes she could play, the way music could transform the atmosphere, soothe tensions, and captivate those who listened. It was a thought that brought a small, private smile to her face, a reminder that there was more to her life than serving tables and managing the expectations of others. Meanwhile, the millionaire continued his subtle mockery, unaware that he was sowing the seeds of his own humility. He laughed at small mistakes, exaggerated minor inconveniences, and seemed intent on proving his superiority to anyone who would watch. His companions followed his lead, chuckling at what they assumed were clever remarks. Yet, the energy in the room began to shift subtly. Some diners felt a quiet irritation, others a sense of anticipation, as if the tension was waiting for a release, a moment that would turn the situation on its head. The waitress, moving between tables, felt the eyes of the restaurant on her, though most were watching without judgment, merely observing the interaction. She remained focused on her tasks, ensuring that each guest received the attention they deserved. Each plate arrived hot and perfectly presented, and every drink was topped up without delay. Her grace under pressure became more apparent with each passing moment, a silent testament to her strength and character. As the evening wore on, the atmosphere in the restaurant was a mix of ordinary dining and subtle drama. The millionaire, confident in his ability to unsettle the staff, had not yet realized that he was in the presence of someone whose talents went far beyond the duties of a waitress. The contrast between arrogance and humility, entitlement and dignity, was becoming increasingly clear. The restaurant, with all its simple charm, became the stage for a story that was quietly unfolding, one that promised an unexpected twist that no one could yet predict. The waitress, aware of the growing tension, allowed herself a moment to take a deep breath, steadying her nerves and centering her thoughts. She reminded herself of her love for music, her dedication to her work, and the sense of pride that came from knowing she was capable, competent, and unshakable. In that moment, she felt a quiet confidence, a sense that she was prepared for whatever might come next, even if she did not yet know what it would be. Little did anyone in the restaurant know that this ordinary evening, filled with the usual smells, sounds, and rhythms of a busy dining space, was about to become extraordinary. The contrast between a millionaire's arrogance and a waitress's hidden talent was on the verge of creating a moment that would leave everyone in awe. The stage was set, the players in place, and the audience unwittingly waiting for a story that would be remembered long after the evening ended. And so, the humble setting of the restaurant, with its warm lights, polished tables, and soft music, became more than just a backdrop. It became the beginning of a tale where patience, humility, and hidden talent would confront arrogance and entitlement, setting the scene for an unforgettable moment that would soon captivate the hearts and minds of everyone present. The restaurant hummed with its usual energy, but the presence of the wealthy man and his friends created an invisible tension that seemed to ripple through the air. The waitress continued her work, moving gracefully between tables, offering polite smiles and attentive service. She kept her focus on the diners around her, but she could feel the millionaire's eyes occasionally flicking toward her, as if assessing, judging, or perhaps looking for a reason to belittle her. It was subtle at first, small comments disguised as casual observations, but each carried a sharp edge. He asked about the menu in a way that suggested doubt, questioning the simplicity of the dishes, the freshness of the ingredients, and the skill of the chefs. His friends laughed quietly, clearly enjoying the display of superiority. Some diners tried to ignore the interaction, pretending to focus on their meals, while others glanced curiously, sensing the tension building. The waitress remained calm, answering each question politely, maintaining a tone that was steady and professional. She knew that any sign of frustration or defensiveness would only encourage him further. Despite the challenging encounter, she found ways to manage the situation gracefully. She kept her movements fluid, balancing plates and drinks, engaging with other guests as naturally as possible. Each smile, each word of courtesy, was genuine, not a performance. Her confidence was quiet but present, a reflection of her understanding that respect comes from composure and skill, not from wealth or status. As the evening went on, the millionaire's attempts to mock her became bolder. He commented on how a waitress should know her place, how entertaining it must be to serve wealthy people, and how unusual it was for someone so young to appear so composed under pressure. He laughed loudly, drawing the attention of the diners around him. Some felt irritated by his arrogance, while others simply watched, curious to see how she would respond. The restaurant, usually a haven of calm, now had an undercurrent of anticipation, as though everyone sensed that something unexpected might happen. The waitress kept her focus, understanding that her response did not need to be verbal. Her professionalism, patience, and grace were already doing more than words ever could. Each time she returned to other tables, she offered genuine attention to every guest, making sure their experience remained pleasant. Diners noticed the contrast, the millionaire's arrogance versus her quiet dignity, and a subtle admiration for her composure began to grow in the room. She occasionally glanced toward the piano in the corner, her mind wandering briefly to thoughts of music. It was a small, private moment of solace, a reminder of her true passion. Playing the piano was her escape, her way of expressing emotions that words often could not convey. She imagined the soft notes filling the room, transforming the atmosphere, and perhaps even putting the arrogant man in his place without confrontation. The idea brought a faint, knowing smile to her face. Meanwhile, the millionaire continued his subtle harassment. He made exaggerated complaints about the speed of service, even though the restaurant was running smoothly. He commented on the decor, the music, and the overall atmosphere, all in ways meant to provoke or belittle. His friends chuckled along, reinforcing his sense of dominance, unaware that their behavior was increasingly grating on the other diners. Some began exchanging silent looks, sharing a quiet judgment about the man's arrogance. Despite all of this, the waitress never lost her composure. She moved between tables with ease, serving drinks, taking orders, and responding to requests. Her body language remained open and confident, her expressions kind and patient. She understood that strength often came in subtle forms, and that sometimes the most powerful response was to maintain dignity in the face of disrespect. The restaurant seemed to take on her energy, a quiet harmony that resisted the negativity around the table occupied by the millionaire and his companions. Her mind occasionally drifted back to the piano. She thought about the music she could play, the melodies that could capture attention and shift the energy in the room. Music had a way of reaching people, of touching them in ways that words could not. The idea of sharing that part of herself, of creating a moment that went beyond service and social hierarchy, grew more appealing with each passing interaction. There was a quiet anticipation building within her, a sense that this evening, though ordinary at first, could become extraordinary. The diners began to notice the tension less as they were drawn into the natural flow of the restaurant, but the contrast between the arrogant behavior of the millionaire and the calm composure of the waitress remained palpable. Her professionalism was a silent rebuke, and her calm responses subtly reminded everyone of her dignity. Even those who were not paying close attention could sense that there was something special about her ability to remain composed under pressure, something that went beyond mere skill in serving. As she approached the table again, the millionaire asked another pointed question, this time about the piano. He questioned whether anyone there could play it well enough to be worth listening to. His tone carried skepticism, as if the idea that a waitress could have such talent was absurd. The other diners glanced over, curious, sensing that a new element of the evening was about to unfold. The waitress paused for a moment, her fingers brushing the edge of the tray she carried, thinking carefully about her next step. Then she spoke with calm assurance. She told him, politely but confidently, that she could play and that she would be happy to demonstrate. There was no hint of challenge or provocation in her voice, only a quiet certainty. The millionaire laughed, dismissive and amused, clearly expecting the performance to be unremarkable. His companions joined in, their laughter echoing around the restaurant. Some diners, however, began to lean in slightly, sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. The waitress excused herself and moved toward the piano. The room seemed to hold its breath, the soft hum of conversation fading as curiosity took hold. The air carried a mixture of anticipation and skepticism, but the waitress remained entirely focused on the music. She seated herself at the piano, her posture relaxed yet confident, and placed her fingers on the keys. The moment was quiet but charged, a pause before something remarkable was about to occur. As her fingers touched the keys, the first notes filled the room. The melody was soft and gentle at first, delicate like a whisper that gradually drew attention from every corner. Diners turned toward her, their conversations slowing as the beauty of the music began to capture their attention. The millionaire, confident and dismissive just moments before, paused mid-laugh, his expression shifting from amusement to surprise. The music was unlike anything he had anticipated, its clarity, emotion, and skill impossible to ignore. The waitress continued, her playing growing in confidence and complexity, each note flowing seamlessly into the next. The room seemed to transform, the previous tension replaced by a sense of wonder. The diners, initially curious, were now fully captivated. Even the staff momentarily paused in their duties, listening as the performance carried through the restaurant. The music had a way of reaching every person present, touching hearts, and commanding attention without a single word spoken. The millionaire's companions exchanged glances, their amusement replaced by astonishment. They had expected a simple display, perhaps a brief, unremarkable performance, but what they were hearing was something extraordinary. The arrogant confidence of the previous interactions faded in the presence of genuine talent and artistry. The contrast was stark, and the atmosphere of the restaurant shifted entirely. What had begun as a scene of subtle mockery was now being transformed by the undeniable skill of the waitress at the piano. By the time the first piece ended, the entire room was silent, not out of discomfort but in awe. The diners waited, holding their breath, as if afraid that speaking might break the spell. The waitress sat quietly for a moment, her hands resting on the keys, her expression calm but satisfied. She had demonstrated something far beyond service, far beyond the expectations of those who had doubted her. In that moment, dignity and talent had triumphed over arrogance and mockery. The millionaire, humbled and silent, could no longer maintain his facade. The laughter, the dismissive comments, all seemed trivial now in the face of such talent. He had expected to assert superiority, to belittle someone he considered beneath him, but the performance had shifted the balance entirely. The room, once filled with ordinary energy and quiet tension, now radiated admiration and respect for the young woman who had remained composed, confident, and extraordinarily talented. As the applause began, the waitress smiled gently, acknowledging the appreciation without arrogance. She had faced the challenge with grace, allowing her talent to speak for itself. The restaurant, a humble setting moments before, had become a place of revelation, where humility, composure, and skill outshone entitlement. The diners, the staff, and even the millionaire witnessed the power of quiet confidence and genuine ability, a lesson that would linger long after the evening ended. The waitress returned to her duties, but now with a subtle, unspoken acknowledgement from everyone present. Her composure had remained intact, her patience had been tested, and her talent had transformed the atmosphere entirely. The evening continued, but something had changed. The balance of power had shifted, not through confrontation, but through skill, dignity, and the quiet, undeniable force of her music. And in that humble restaurant, A story of unexpected triumph had quietly begun, one that would soon reach its full and unforgettable height. The restaurant had quieted as the waitress approached the piano, her movements deliberate but unhurried. Every eye in the room followed her, drawn not by arrogance or curiosity, but by the invisible promise of something extraordinary about to unfold. The millionaire, who had spent the evening flaunting his wealth and mocking the staff, leaned back in his chair, expecting a performance that would be unremarkable at best. He was confident in his judgment, certain that no waitress could surprise him in a meaningful way. The waitress sat at the piano, the polished keys cool beneath her fingers. For a brief moment, she paused, letting her presence fill the space. Her calmness was magnetic, a quiet assurance that demanded attention without any effort. The diners, sensing the shift, leaned forward slightly, their conversations fading into an expectant silence. There was something in the way she held herself that told them they were about to witness a remarkable moment. She began to play gently at first, allowing the soft notes to ripple through the restaurant. The melody was delicate, almost like a whisper, but it carried an unmistakable emotion that immediately caught the attention of everyone present. The millionaire's laughter, ready to erupt at any moment, faltered. His companions looked at him with raised eyebrows, sensing that this was not the performance they had anticipated. The music was mesmerizing, pulling listeners into a world far removed from the ordinary restaurant environment. As her fingers moved across the keys with precision and grace, the melody grew richer, more expressive. Each note told a story, speaking of passion, dedication, and a quiet strength that no words could capture. The diners felt the transformation in the atmosphere. It was as if the restaurant itself had become a concert hall, every sound and movement aligned with the music. Even the staff paused briefly, caught up in the unexpected beauty of the performance. The millionaire, whose arrogance had dominated the evening, now found himself unmoored. He shifted in his seat, a frown forming as he tried to process what he was hearing. He had expected to be entertained only mildly, perhaps enough to confirm his own superiority, but instead, he was confronted with undeniable talent. The realization was subtle but powerful. For the first time that evening, he had no words, no witty remark, no way to assert control. The music had humbled him without any confrontation, simply through its beauty and the skill with which it was delivered. The waitress continued to play, her eyes focused on the keys yet aware of the room around her. She allowed the music to fill every corner, to reach every listener, and to touch the hearts of those who had come expecting only a routine dinner. Her performance was not about proving anyone wrong or seeking recognition. It was about expressing herself fully and honestly, allowing her hidden talent to speak louder than any words or gestures could. The diners, initially curious, were now fully captivated. Some held their breath, afraid to disturb the spell, while others smiled quietly, sharing the unspoken understanding that they were witnessing something rare and beautiful. The restaurant staff, who had seen many performances and events over the years, nodded subtly to each other, recognizing the extraordinary skill in front of them. Even the sound of clinking glasses or footsteps seemed muted in respect for the unfolding music. As the melody developed, it became clear that this was no ordinary performance. The waitress demonstrated both technical mastery and emotional depth, combining skill with feeling in a way that left listeners entranced. The music rose and fell like a conversation, gentle at times, powerful at others, each phrase carefully shaped and delivered. The audience could sense her dedication, her years of practice, and the genuine love she had for her art. The millionaire's companions, who had laughed and smirked at the beginning, now sat in stunned silence. Their expressions shifted from amusement to astonishment, as they realized that the young woman they had dismissed was far more talented than they could have imagined. The contrast between the arrogance they had displayed and the grace of the performance was striking. Some of them exchanged looks, their previous confidence replaced by an uncomfortable recognition of their own misjudgment. The performance continued, each note carrying weight and intention. The waitress's fingers moved with both strength and delicacy, guiding the music through moments of tension and release. The atmosphere in the restaurant had completely changed. It was no longer just a place for dining, but a space filled with emotion, connection, and shared experience. The diners felt a sense of unity, drawn together by the sheer beauty of what they were witnessing. The millionaire, previously so self-assured, now struggled to maintain composure. He shifted in his chair, unable to hide the awe in his expression. The confidence that had guided him all evening had been challenged, not through confrontation, but through something far more profound. He realized that wealth and status could not overshadow talent, dedication, and the quiet power of humility. The music spoke in a language he could not control or mock, a reminder that some forms of excellence transcend social hierarchies and expectations. The waitress's playing reached a crescendo, her skill evident in every note, every subtle nuance of touch and timing. She conveyed emotion through the music in a way that words could never match, and the audience responded instinctively. Some leaned forward, eyes wide with admiration. Others closed their eyes, letting the melody wash over them. The restaurant, once filled with chatter and casual conversation, was now united in silent appreciation. All attention focused on the piano and the woman who commanded it. When the piece finally concluded, there was a moment of stunned silence. The last note lingered in the air, and for a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, slowly, applause began to rise, soft at first, then growing louder as diners and staff alike expressed their admiration. The sound was genuine, heartfelt, and unanimous, filling the restaurant with energy and appreciation. The waitress smiled, acknowledging the applause with humility, her demeanor calm and gracious despite the overwhelming response. The millionaire, who had expected to entertain himself at someone else's expense, now sat speechless. His companions looked at him, as if asking for an explanation, but he had none to give. The performance had left him humbled, and though he tried to regain composure, it was clear that the evening had taken an unexpected turn. He had been reminded, in the most unassuming yet powerful way, that talent and dedication cannot be dismissed by arrogance or wealth. The waitress remained seated at the piano for a moment, allowing the energy of the room to settle. She did not boast, did not seek recognition beyond the applause. She simply allowed the music to exist fully, to complete its journey. Her eyes briefly met those of the millionaire, and in that silent exchange, there was no anger, no vindictiveness, only quiet confidence. She had demonstrated her worth without aggression, proving that true talent speaks louder than words or social status. The diners continued to applaud, some rising to their feet, unable to contain their admiration. The staff, inspired by the display of composure and skill, felt a renewed sense of pride in their workplace and the people who made it special. The atmosphere, which had been tense moments before, was now electric with shared appreciation and joy. The simple act of playing the piano had transformed the room, turning an ordinary evening into something unforgettable. As she returned to her service duties, the sense of quiet triumph lingered in the air. The millionaire and his companions remained seated, processing the experience, their attitudes softened by the undeniable display of talent and grace. The waitress continued her work with the same humility she had always shown. Yet there was a subtle shift in the way others perceived her. She had revealed a hidden dimension of herself, a talent that transcended her role as a waitress and touched everyone present. The evening went on, but the impact of the performance remained. Diners spoke in hushed tones about the extraordinary skill they had witnessed, staff exchanged knowing smiles, and even the millionaire sat quietly, humbled by the unexpected lesson in respect and talent. The restaurant, which had been a simple backdrop for a routine dinner, had become the stage for a powerful reminder that true worth is found not in wealth or status, but in skill, dedication, and the courage to express oneself fully. And so, what began as a quiet night in a humble restaurant transformed into a moment of revelation, a turning point that would linger in the minds of all who were present. The waitress, through her music, had quietly shifted the balance, leaving a lasting impression that would be remembered long after the evening ended. The story of that night, the contrast between arrogance and humility, and the power of genuine talent, had begun in earnest, setting the stage for the final moments that would complete this unforgettable tale. The room was completely transformed as the waitress continued her performance. The music flowed with a depth and clarity that captured every ear in the restaurant. Her fingers moved across the piano keys with a graceful precision, each note deliberate, each chord resonating with emotion. The diners, staff, and even the millionaire and his companions were spellbound, their previous chatter and casual movements forgotten. The simple restaurant had become a place where time itself seemed to pause, leaving only the music and the hearts it touched. The melody began softly, delicate and lyrical, drawing listeners in with its gentle rhythm. It told a story, one of quiet strength and resilience, a narrative that no words could have conveyed as effectively. The diners leaned in slightly, some closing their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Even those who were skeptical at first could not deny the skill and feeling that filled every note. The waitress had managed to turn what might have been a casual performance into a compelling experience that demanded attention and respect. As the piece developed, the music grew richer, more complex. The subtlety of her touch gave way to bold, sweeping gestures that filled the space with a sense of power and passion. Her hands moved fluidly, dancing across the keys, creating layers of sound that intertwined with the soft hum of the restaurant, enhancing rather than overpowering it. Each note was infused with emotion, speaking directly to the hearts of those who listened, bridging the gap between performer and audience in a way that few could achieve. The millionaire, who had spent the evening projecting arrogance and entitlement, now sat rigid in his seat. His confident smirk had vanished, replaced by a look of astonishment. He had expected to be entertained lightly, to witness something inconsequential, but the reality was far different. The skill, the passion, the undeniable talent of the waitress was impossible to ignore. He shifted uncomfortably, realizing that he had misjudged her entirely. The confidence that had carried him through previous interactions now felt hollow in the face of her artistry. His companions were equally captivated. The laughter and casual remarks that had filled their conversations earlier were gone, replaced by wide-eyed attention and quiet awe. They leaned forward, silent, as though afraid to disrupt the delicate moment. The contrast between their earlier behavior and their current astonishment was stark. They had assumed that wealth and status could command respect or entertainment, but here, in this small restaurant, their assumptions had been shattered. The music reached a powerful crescendo, the culmination of skill, emotion, and control. The waitress's fingers flew over the keys, creating waves of sound that seemed to ripple through the room. Diners were visibly moved, some with tears glistening in their eyes, some with smiles that spoke of shared understanding. The staff watched in admiration, recognizing not only her talent but her ability to command a room without a word, without arrogance, and without seeking validation. Her composure and skill created a balance that transformed the atmosphere entirely. In that moment, the waitress's performance became more than music. It became a statement. It was a testament to patience, perseverance, and quiet confidence. She had endured mockery and subtle insults, had remained humble and professional, and now, through her art, she commanded the respect that had been denied to her by arrogance and entitlement. The millionaire, who had sought to assert superiority, found himself humbled, confronted with the undeniable truth that true talent and dignity cannot be undermined by wealth or status. The melody softened again, allowing a moment of reflection. The subtle shift in dynamics gave the audience time to absorb what they had witnessed. The delicate passages spoke of introspection and vulnerability, creating a contrast with the powerful crescendos that had come before. The diners felt a connection not just to the music, but to the performer herself, sensing the humanity behind each note, the dedication and love that had brought her to this moment. The room was alive with emotion, united in silent admiration. The millionaire shifted in his seat again, his expression revealing a mix of regret and realization. He had underestimated the young woman before him, believing that status and money could overshadow skill and dedication. Now he understood that true greatness cannot be forced or bought. It is earned through effort, humility, and passion. His companions seemed to share this revelation, their earlier laughter replaced by a solemn acknowledgement of what they had witnessed. The power dynamic that had defined the evening was completely reversed. As the performance progressed, the waitress showcased her full range of ability. The music flowed effortlessly from delicate, whispering notes to bold, commanding chords that filled the room. Each transition was seamless, reflecting not only technical skill but also an intuitive understanding of how to move and engage an audience. The diners were drawn deeper into the performance, experiencing the highs and lows, the subtleties and the grandeur. Even the staff, accustomed to busy and lively evenings, felt the exceptional nature of the moment. The finale approached, and with it, the culmination of all the emotion, skill, and presence the waitress had poured into her performance. Her fingers danced with both strength and grace, bringing the piece to a peak that left everyone breathless. The music soared, then softened, tapering to a delicate conclusion that resonated through the room. The final note lingered in the air, a quiet, triumphant whisper that seemed to encapsulate the entire experience. The restaurant remained still for a heartbeat longer, as if holding onto the magic of the moment. Then, slowly, applause erupted. It started quietly, hesitant, but soon grew into a wave of admiration that filled the entire restaurant. Diners rose from their seats, clapping enthusiastically, some whistling softly, others nodding with appreciation. The staff joined in, their smiles wide and genuine, acknowledging the extraordinary talent they had just witnessed. Even the millionaire, previously so commanding and dismissive, clapped with a subdued yet sincere respect, his expression revealing the impact the performance had on him. His companions followed suit, their eyes reflecting a newfound understanding and humility. The waitress stood from the piano, a calm and gentle smile gracing her face. She acknowledged the applause with a simple nod, her demeanor still humble despite the overwhelming admiration. She did not boast, did not seek personal recognition. Her satisfaction came from having shared her music, having transformed a tense and ordinary evening into a moment of beauty and inspiration. Her performance had spoken volumes, demonstrating that talent, dedication, and grace could overcome arrogance and entitlement in the most profound and lasting way. The atmosphere in the restaurant was now filled with warmth, admiration, and a sense of shared experience. Diners spoke quietly among themselves, reflecting on the performance and the quiet dignity of the waitress. The staff moved with renewed energy, inspired by the demonstration of skill, patience, and professionalism. The millionaire and his companions remained seated for a moment longer, absorbing the lesson that had been imparted, realizing that respect and recognition cannot be demanded, but must be earned. The waitress returned to her duties, moving among the tables with her usual grace and attentiveness. Yet there was a subtle shift in the way others perceived her. Her presence was no longer defined solely by her role as a server. It now encompassed the extraordinary talent she had revealed and the strength she had demonstrated in maintaining composure under pressure. She had created a moment that would be remembered not just for the beauty of her music, but for the message it conveyed about humility, dignity, and the power of quiet confidence. The millionaire approached her later, his demeanor changed. Gone was the arrogance and mockery. In its place was respect and acknowledgement. He offered a sincere apology for his earlier behavior, recognizing the extraordinary talent he had underestimated. The waitress received his words with a gracious nod, accepting the apology without bitterness or gloating. The encounter, once marked by tension and imbalance, had transformed into a moment of understanding and mutual respect. The diners, too, left with a lasting impression. They had witnessed a performance that transcended ordinary expectations, a demonstration of skill and humanity that would linger in their minds long after they left the restaurant. The waitress's ability to remain composed, humble, and extraordinarily talented had created a story that they would share and remember, a reminder that true excellence cannot be measured by status or wealth, but by dedication, passion, and grace. As the evening came to a close, the restaurant settled back into its usual rhythm, but the impact of the performance remained. The atmosphere was charged with admiration, inspiration, and a sense of shared human experience. The waitress, quietly proud yet still humble, continued her work, her presence now imbued with the respect and acknowledgement she had earned. The story of that evening, the climax of her performance, had reached its peak, leaving an unforgettable mark on everyone who had been present, a testament to the power of talent, patience, and dignity. The evening began to wind down, but the impact of the performance lingered in the air like a gentle echo that refused to fade. Diners who had witnessed the incredible display of talent were still talking quietly among themselves, sharing their admiration and reflecting on the unexpected lesson that had unfolded before them. The atmosphere was one of warmth and awe, a reminder that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary moments could occur. The restaurant, once just a setting for a simple dinner, had become a stage for a story of humility, skill, and quiet triumph. The waitress moved gracefully between tables, ensuring that every guest had received their orders, that glasses were refilled, and that smiles were returned with genuine warmth. Though the applause had ended, the respect she had earned was tangible, evident in the lingering glances of diners who had been captivated by her performance. She remained calm, humble, and professional, her demeanor untouched by the admiration surrounding her. It was clear that her satisfaction came not from recognition, but from the simple act of sharing her gift. The millionaire, who had spent the evening attempting to belittle the staff, now approached her with a very different presence. His arrogance had been replaced by something more sincere, a quiet acknowledgement of the mistake he had made in underestimating her. His eyes were careful, respectful, as he offered a polite apology for his earlier behavior. The words were simple, genuine, carrying the weight of a lesson learned not through confrontation, but through an experience that had humbled him in the most profound way. The waitress accepted his apology with a soft smile and a nod, demonstrating that forgiveness and understanding were qualities just as powerful as her talent. She did not gloat or demand recognition, allowing the encounter to remain gracious and dignified. In that moment, the balance of power that had defined their earlier interaction had shifted entirely, not because of anger or retaliation, but because of quiet confidence, skill, and poise. The millionaire left the encounter with a newfound respect, a realization that true talent and patience cannot be overshadowed by wealth or entitlement. The other diners continued to reflect on what they had seen. They had come to the restaurant expecting a routine dinner, perhaps a pleasant evening, but instead had witnessed a transformation. The performance had been a reminder that talent could appear in unexpected places, and that humility and composure often carried far more power than arrogance. Conversations buzzed softly around the room, people sharing their thoughts on the extraordinary talent of the young waitress and the humility of the moment. It was a story they would carry with them, one that would inspire and remind them of the beauty in unexpected moments. The staff, too, had been affected. They exchanged subtle smiles and nods, inspired by the display of skill and grace. Many had worked alongside the waitress for some time, aware of her dedication, but seeing her perform in front of the entire restaurant, and witnessing the reaction it elicited, reinforced their admiration for her. Her talent and composure had created an energy that lifted the whole restaurant, proving that true dedication is recognized and felt, even if it is not always spoken about. As the evening continued, the waitress returned to her duties with renewed energy. She moved with the same efficiency and grace, but there was a quiet assurance about her now, a subtle glow of confidence that came from having shared something deeply personal and meaningful. Her interactions with diners were warm and attentive, and each polite exchange carried a depth that reflected the extraordinary experience that had unfolded earlier. Even the simplest gestures, pouring a drink, refilling a plate, offering a smile, seemed infused with the resonance of her talent and composure. The millionaire and his companions remained for a while longer. Their demeanor changed. They spoke quietly among themselves, reflecting on the performance and the lesson it had imparted. The arrogance that had marked their entrance had dissipated, replaced by a quiet respect, a sense of humility that came from seeing someone demonstrate true skill and confidence without the need for showmanship or pretense. They observed the waitress as she moved gracefully between tables, and in her composed and attentive manner, they recognized that the evening had been more than a lesson in music. It had been a lesson in character. Outside, the city continued with its usual noise and energy, but inside the restaurant, there was a sense of calm fulfillment. Patrons lingered at their tables, savoring the last bites of their meals while exchanging quiet words of admiration. Some reflected on the contrast between the earlier arrogance and the quiet power displayed through music, understanding that wealth and status could not guarantee respect, but skill, humility, and patience could. The story of that evening, the transformation of a simple dining experience into something unforgettable, was already taking root in their minds. The waitress found a moment of solitude as she cleared a nearby table. She paused, her hand resting lightly on the polished surface, reflecting on the journey of the evening. The tension she had faced earlier, the subtle mockery and arrogance, had transformed into an opportunity to share her gift, to demonstrate that dignity and talent could stand firm in the face of condescension. The satisfaction she felt was quiet, deeply personal, and completely unassuming. She knew that the evening had been extraordinary not because of applause or acknowledgement, but because of the genuine impact it had created. As the last diners prepared to leave, the waitress offered warm farewells, her presence leaving a lasting impression. Some lingered to express their appreciation personally, acknowledging the beauty and skill of her performance. Each comment, each smile, was received with humility and gratitude. The impact of her actions extended beyond the music itself, touching hearts and reminding people that human connection and genuine talent could transcend social barriers and expectations. The millionaire eventually approached once more before departing. This time, his words were quieter, more reflective. He expressed gratitude, acknowledging not only her skill but the grace and patience with which she had conducted herself throughout the evening. The waitress accepted his words with a gentle nod, her demeanor calm yet proud in a subtle, unspoken way. In that exchange, there was a sense of resolution, a moment of understanding that transcended the earlier tension. The lesson had been learned, not through argument or confrontation, but through the quiet power of talent, humility, and authenticity. The staff cleaned up the restaurant for the night, but the energy of the evening remained. Conversations lingered, hearts were touched, and the story of the performance spread quietly among patrons and employees alike. The event had become more than a performance. It had become a shared experience, a testament to the power of composure, skill, and the courage to rise above mockery without compromise. It reminded everyone present that true greatness is often revealed in moments of humility and authenticity. The waitress, as she finished her shift, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The evening had begun like any other, but it had ended as something extraordinary. She had faced arrogance and mockery, responded with grace and composure, and allowed her talent to shine in a way that no one could ignore. The respect she earned was lasting, not because it was demanded, but because it was deserved. The restaurant, now quiet and peaceful, seemed to acknowledge the story that had unfolded within its walls, a silent witness to the remarkable display of skill and humanity. The millionaire and his companions left the restaurant with a transformed perspective. The evening had humbled them, and the lesson they carried would influence their interactions and judgments in ways they had not anticipated. The story of the young waitress, her quiet dignity, and her extraordinary talent would linger in their minds, a reminder that character and skill often speak louder than wealth and status. They left in thoughtful silence, each person processing the subtle yet profound impact of the night. The diners who remained reflected on the experience, understanding that they had been part of something truly special. The performance had been a rare convergence of talent, courage, and humility, creating an atmosphere that was both inspiring and unforgettable. It was a reminder that human potential often lies hidden, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The evening had not only entertained but also taught an invaluable lesson about respect, patience, and the quiet power of authenticity. As the last lights dimmed and the restaurant prepared to close, the waitress took a deep breath, savoring the calm after the extraordinary storm of the evening. She had faced challenges, remained composed, and shared her talent with courage and grace. Her performance had left an indelible mark on everyone present, transforming a simple dining experience into a story of inspiration and human connection. The night had shown that dignity, talent, and humility could create moments that resonate far beyond their immediate context. In the end, the waitress returned to her small, modest corner, reflecting on the journey of the evening. She understood that the true measure of her success was not in applause or recognition but in the impact she had made on the hearts of those around her. The millionaire had learned a lesson, the diners had been inspired, and the staff had witnessed the quiet strength of someone who embodied patience, composure, and talent. It was a night that none of them would forget, a story of triumph, humility, and the enduring power of human skill and grace. And so, in the humble setting of a simple restaurant, a young waitress had transformed an ordinary evening into a remarkable story. Through her patience, her composure, and her extraordinary talent, she had silenced arrogance, inspired admiration, and reminded everyone present that true greatness is found in humility, dedication, and the courage to share one's gifts. The memory of that night, the music, the lesson, and the quiet triumph would remain with everyone who had been there, a lasting testament to the extraordinary power of human talent.